Welcome to Class 5, which is entitled Working with PDFs. The reason we like paper so much is that it's very familiar. If we want to keep our law practice completely digital, we need to become just as comfortable in the digital realm. As we've said, PDFs are the digital equivalent of paper, so we need to get very familiar with PDFs. Why use PDFs? Of course, PDFs are not the only choice in terms of a file type to represent digital paper. As with most computer solutions, there are other choices. You could decide to use TIFF images as your format for digital documents. Indeed, many outside scanning companies do. But PDFs are preferable to most lawyers for a couple of reasons. First, federal courts require electronic filing as a matter of course now, and they require uploading PDF files. Second, PDF files are more familiar to more people. And third, they can be more secure if you require things like password protection or electronic signatures. But to work with PDF documents, you need a robust program that lets you manipulate the documents as well as view them. The best program to use for this purpose is Adobe Acrobat. Note, I'm not talking about the free Adobe Reader, which simply lets you view PDFs and not much else. Most people get confused and think of the Reader program because that's most familiar to them. So why would you want Adobe Acrobat? Well, simply because you need to do more with your digital documents than just read them. You need to manipulate them, which we'll talk about in detail in just a bit. So what can you do with Adobe Acrobat and PDF files? First, you can read PDF files, which means that you can zoom in or rotate pages to make reading easier. You can find information inside of PDFs, assuming that they're text searchable, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And third, you can manipulate PDF documents in many ways, such as deleting pages, inserting pages, making highlights, bait stamping, and much, much more. So you need Acrobat. One problem, there is more than one version of Acrobat. The professional version costs the most and does the most. We recommend that lawyers get at least one copy of the professional version. If there's more than one lawyer in a firm, then it makes sense to get the other lawyers just the standard version, which costs a little bit less, but doesn't do certain things that lawyers need to do occasionally. Last, of course, there is the free reader. The first thing that most people need to do is to get familiar with Acrobat. And what I mean by that is you have to get comfortable using the program, to the point that you don't have to think about how to work with the PDF. In other words, you need to make the reading experience as natural as possible. Right now I suggest you go to the Adobe website and download the latest version of Adobe Reader. Not Adobe Acrobat, the Reader. So download Adobe Reader version 9 and open it up so that you can follow along as much as possible with the first part of this video. The first thing you should do is spend about 15 minutes playing with the preferences, which you'll find under the top left menu. In a few minutes we're going to talk about 3 things that you need to do with your PDFs. You need to learn how to navigate through PDFs, change the orientation from portrait to landscape, and zoom in on key information. Now let's take a look at the toolbar. You'll note that there are many tasks that you can perform just by clicking one of the icons here. But first, note that I have Adobe Pro open. Still, the Reader will look the same and will be adjustable in the same way. When you first open Reader, version 9, you'll want to spend time learning what these icons do. Hover over each one with your mouse and see what the pop-up menu tells you about its function. To add functions to the toolbar that are not there now, you'll want to go to the Menu, View, Toolbars to add toolbars. At first, the toolbar will appear as a separate item. You'll want to connect it to the main menu strip, so just drag it over until it locks on. You might have to play with it to make this happen, but just hold onto the mouse button until you get a visual indicator that it's locking on. Something that I immediately tweak is the page display orientation. I like for my initial page display to include the top and bottom of each page. I suggest you learn to set the page display to your preference, whether it's page width or page length. Sooner or later you're going to open up a PDF that's rotated wrong, or which you want to rotate in some way. This is a command you can choose to apply to a single page or to a whole document. If you want to zoom in on a passage that contains small text in order to make it out, just use the magnifying tool and draw around the area you want to zoom in on. You can keep zooming by this method. Afterwards, you can use the previous view command to back away to the initial page view you were in before you started zooming. If the previous view button isn't on the toolbar, you should make sure you place it there. This is a command you'll almost always use after you've used the zoom command. Finding passages that contain text strings is easy, but only if the document is a text-based document. What does that mean? It means that if you converted a Word document to PDF, then it's a text-based document. If you scanned it, then it's not, unless you run the OCR command. Now let's talk about manipulating PDFs. Bookmarks are like hyperlinks that you store on a side drawer. The hyperlinks can take you to any page in the PDF. Obviously, bookmarks are most useful for multi-page PDFs that contain lots of pages. For example, an attorney might keep all of his or her pleadings in a single PDF, and then tag each separate document with a bookmark that indicates what the document is, complaint or answer, etc. Comments are another way to make notes about a particular passage on a PDF. Think of them as electronic sticky notes, except they're a lot more versatile. You can navigate to comments by clicking on a list view of them, which appear like bookmarks, but at the bottom of the PDF. And the typewriter tool is useful for typing text into forms that have been scanned in as PDFs. There's a lot more to say about using PDFs, and we'll cover that in the next class.